find him, he's going to be treated as an enemy combatant, and I fully agree with that.
See, but
we've made that decision in other cases.
The fact that he's now here, we found Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in Pakistan, and we're now giving him constitutional rights. He's not. See, you're trying to.
But why wasn't he brought to military justice then by now? He was found, and he's sitting in Guantanamo.
Because General Holder wanted to do it this way. And I think, quite frankly, that we're putting New York and our country at great risk. We may be able to keep the courthouse safe, but the other areas, the hotels and the subways, it's going to be a show for Al-Qaeda to basically propagandize that entire situation, and we're making a huge mistake. And that's another difference when it comes to for the national security.
We can agree to disagree on that too, but I've spent a lot of my time keeping people safe. I'm not afraid to do what's necessary to keep people safe, and I understand the processes that we need to use to do it.
I honestly think that we're giving them an incentive by giving them American rights. I honestly do. If you're an enemy combatant and you're living in a cave, a jail cell in America looks a lot better with constitutional rights. Looks a lot better than where they're living today. That's just an incentive for them to come over here. And I think that this also goes back to why did they attack us to begin with. I mean, if we're really talking about safety, we have to talk about why they attack us. They attack us because we occupy their countries. They attack us because we have a history of meddling in their affairs. If we didn't, then we wouldn't be the primary target. When Al-Qaeda or any of these other organizations comes after a country, they always come after America. Why isn't it one of the other European countries? Why isn't it, Australia? Why isn't it somebody else? Why is it always America? It's because we have a history of interfering with their past, whether it's messing with their elections or doing other things or occupying their territory. And we will continue to incite this violence toward our country if we continue to have occupations abroad.
Well, Joe, in fairness, we've seen terrorism all over the world. England, France, travel anywhere now and you recognize the heightened security that every country, particularly democracies, face. But that's the point. Democracies have to work in ways and with additional protections to keep citizens safe and do what they need to, as Israel does, to make sure that people stay safe. And so we can learn from that. I agree.
Absolutely. But when you hear somebody from Al-Qaeda talking on one of those wonderful radio broadcasts, who are the infidels? America are the infidels. It's not the French are the infidels. It is we must kill the American infidels. And that's a problem. And the reason why they are incented to come after us is because we occupy their territories. If I was a kid and I was growing up and I had a foreign military person walking up and down the streets with a gun, it would be very easy to convert me into a combatant when I was a teenager.
Aren't you glad you grew up in the United States?
Exactly, but I think you understand. But I think you understand the point. You're not going to like anybody walking up and down your street with a weapon. It feels awkward. It feels like it's an invasion of your privacy.
And that's why we need better intelligence and analysis of it, so we know who is Al-Qaeda and do better than we did, obviously, on Christmas Eve to make sure they don't get on our planes.
And I don't have any problem with that. What I have a problem with is if we occupy their country, we are creating generation after generation of people who hate us.
Just keep things even. You want to take a bit more on this, and we'll move on. Okay. Next question will go first to Mr. Kennedy. University of Massachusetts flagship campus at Amherst was in the position of looking at significant increases in fees and costs. It received, through Governor Patrick's office, federal stimulus dollars, which will help ameliorate some of the anticipated problems. But people there are very worried because they wonder what's going to happen when the federal stimulus money goes away, as it soon will. Number one, was it the right thing to do in the first place to get that federal stimulus money here and to put it into public higher ed? And what about the future? Would you, should you go to Washington, have any qualms, or would you be in favor of, again, helping fund public higher ed in this tough time?
So I'm going to give the very unpopular response because I'm a student of economics and I understand the laws of supply and demand probably better than anybody at this table because of my background. The reality is we create bubbles every single time we push money into a situation. And from an education standpoint, one of the huge bubbles that we see that has grown over time is the strain that is put on a new college graduate. Now, why does that happen? Years and years ago, before there weren't grants in place, you will find that college tuition increased similarly to the price of inflation. We have increased our grants. We have allowed everybody who wants to go to college. And everybody who wants to should be able to go to college, but there's a price that needs to be paid. Every single time somebody takes out a grant, and it goes to a specific institution, that institution is flush with cash. So we've created the environment that, hey, you can go to college, and the college gets all the money that it wants, but then, in turn, what does the college do? The college increases tuition. And what does it do? It doesn't increase tuition to 2 or 3%. By the laws of supply and demand, it's able to increase tuition 8%, 10% year over year. And who is the person who loses at the end of this? The person who loses at the end of this is the student that graduates, and they've got a small mortgage that they have to pay off, as opposed to an education. What we need to do is we need to put right solutions in place, and we need to figure out how to cap some of the increases in spending at some of our public universities, not send significant amounts of money to them that will create artificial bubbles and cause problems down the road.
Ms. Coakley.
Massachusetts is blessed to have a very strong public, secondary, and higher education system, as well as private. And I think we have an embarrassment of riches here, and we're lucky for that. One of the things that I believe that every child in this Bay State and maybe eventually in the country who wants to go to college should have access to do that. It's become very expensive. I think that the UMass campus is a flagship university. I think that in light of the amounts of money that went towards trying to keep jobs, which was part of the stimulus, not just create jobs, but keep jobs and grow them, you've cited a problem that we always have. And with the idea that we get everybody back on their feet, we save jobs, we hope that as the private sector comes back and we provide for tax credits perhaps for people to go to college, and we make sure that we take off the burden on people who do get loans, having gotten an education they want, that we will be able to readjust. As the economy comes back, our tax revenues will come up. We will have more money to spend on the things that we think are important in Massachusetts, including public education at every level.
We've wrestled with this. As you know, I've been in the legislature 12 years, taking over 6,000 votes between an assessor, selectman, state rep, state senator. We've reviewed the budgets of in every line item, not just one line item, for example, in the Attorney General's office. We discussed at length that very issue, the fact that there'll be an artificial, basically, backfill to create that feeling of, oh, we're okay, we don't need to do anything. We asked the colleges to do top-to-bottom reviews and save as much money as possible. They could do more. But the fact that the stimulus bill was used, it hasn't created one new job. It's maybe protected government jobs, but it hasn't stimulated the economy to the point where individual businesses are bettering themselves and creating that, if that's what you're saying now, creating jobs and increasing tax revenues. It's not happening. So UMass and all the other schools in the system that we support in Massachusetts knew that. We offered $1 billion in cuts in the legislature